Hey guys, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. I'm here with a replay against Jund, testing out Chandra, Torch of Defiance, a new card from Kalitas. Just on its stats, it seems like an incredibly powerful spell. Can exile the top card of their library, and they can cast that card if they want, so card advantage for +1 is pretty great. If they don't cast the card, Chandra, Torch of Defiance deals 2 damage to each opponent. So if you don't have mana for that particular card that you exile from the top of your library, you still get to do 2 damage to the opponent. So very strong +1 here. Another +1 here gets to add 2 red to your mana pool, so effectively making Chandra only cost 2. Again, pretty strong. -3 says 4 damage to target creature. So she gets to protect herself. If we have sort of a single big threat on the board, she can just get rid of it. And the -7 emblem is pretty insane. It says whenever you cast a spell, any spell, doesn't need to be an instant or sorcery, any spell can be a creature, this emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player. So pretty strong way to close out the game there if they can get her up to 7. So we see 2 copies of Chandra in the opponent's opening hand, a little bit clunky. But they do have 2 lands and a Tarmogoyf and 2 pieces of removal, so it seems like a pretty easy keep on their side. On my side of things, a little bit clunkier. I've got 4 lands, AEther Vial, and 2 creatures that in the dark are not the most powerful in our deck. We have to hope the opponent is playing creatures for Harbinger to be useful, and we have to hope for the opponent to be playing spells for Cursecatcher to be great. AEther Vial is always great in the opening hand, and with AEther Vial, 2 creatures and access to Mutavault, and being in the dark here and not knowing if the opponent is on counterspells, having Cavern of Souls in the opening hand, it doesn't happen every game because I only have 2 Cavern of Souls in the deck. So against unknown opponents, I tend to add a little bit of priority to opening hands that have this card in it because it is a rare and powerful card to have. So I chose to keep. And I'm going to open with Minamo into AEther Vial. Opponent miraculously top decks Inquisition here. You know, I didn't have a very explosive start anyway, but it's just a little bit obnoxious that he gets to see my hand and take whatever he wants here. So he sees the hand and chose to take Harbinger out of it. Alright, so for my turn, I drew another land, which is exactly what I didn't want to see when I kept a 4-land hand. Gonna play Cursecatcher right now since he already knows about it. And he's tapped out. Might as well get the effect on the table right now. Play the Mutavault because I might want to attack with it. Opponent continues to draw sort of crazy cards, but is gonna want to hit some lands at some point or another. Plays a Bloodstained Mire. He's going to go all the way down to 14. He knows I don't have a lot of pressure, and he has 2 removal spells in hand. Gets a Blood Crypt, and plays out a Tarmogoyf. That guy's already a 3/4, I believe. Pretty standard size for Tarmogoyf if it comes out turn 2. Let me hide the Cursecatcher here, hide the Mutavault, and so these are the cards in my hand that the opponent knows I have. He doesn't know that I have that second Cavern, so that one's secret right now. As I was mentioning, Tarmogoyf, pretty typical as a 3/4. If the opponent opens Inquisition, they get to take a creature, so I have a creature in my graveyard, and then sorcery and land make it a 3/4. So for my turn, well, I take AEther Vial up to 2 and hit one of the best possible cards in this situation. I didn't know on turn 2 that the opponent was screwed for his lands a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and hit his Overgrown Tomb. With black, green, and black-red on the table, green is a more important color in most Jund decks than red. They have, most of their creatures are green creatures, between Tarmogoyf and Scavenging Ooze and Grim Flayer. They need green to cast most of their creatures. I guess Kalitas is straight up just black, and yeah. So went with Overgrown Tomb and drew into a Silvergill. So starting to really draw well here. AEther Vial will bring the Silvergill in. Unfortunately, I hit another land. We'll play one of my lands and pass back to the opponent. So taking him off of this land, actually, we turn him off of Terminate and Abrupt Decay. Obviously, he's nowhere near Chandra, and he needs another black source to cast Liliana. Now, not quite sure why he didn't get in with the Tarmogoyf. I guess being at 14 life and without access to his colors for his removal, he doesn't want to start racing me. If he attacks with the Tarmogoyf, I can just crack back for 5 with the Mutavault and Silvergill and Cursecatcher. And with him already at a low life total, I guess it makes sense for him to try to leave up some defense. So I drew another land. Thankfully, it is a Mutavault. And this blocker is going to effectively hold me up. I don't want to just throw away one of my creatures to push 3 points of damage and then have a slower clock the following turn. So at this point, the opponent has seen my island, and he just doesn't know about... He knows about one of my caverns. Okay, well, drew a Black Clave Cliffs. That's pretty spectacular because now he has access to Terminate and these 2 Liliana of the Veils in his hand. Even though the opponent's choked on mana, I'm going to sacrifice the Cursecatcher here because I want to prioritize power on the table with him already at 14. Alright, so to my turn I go and I draw another land. Now, we really want to get Liliana off the table, even if it means we do so at the cost of one of our creatures. She already killed one of them, and we're going to have to let this Tarmogoyf eat one of our dudes. So Liliana ultimately netting 2 of our creatures, which is pretty great, but if we let her tick up, then she's just an onboard removal spell moving forward. So in this situation, I really only need to attack with 2 creatures because he's going to block and eat one of them with the Tarmogoyf, and then Liliana will get hit with the other one. If I activated the other Mutavault, it doesn't really serve a purpose because I either have to say all 3 are attacking Lily, in which case the same thing happens. Tarmogoyf eats one of them, and she takes 4 instead of 2. Either way, it's lethal for Liliana. If I activate this Mutavault and say I'm attacking the opponent with one of them, and Liliana with the other 2, then the opponent just eats the one that's attacking him, and Liliana takes 4. She was going to die anyway, and the opponent still gets to eat a creature. If I activate the second Mutavault and attack him with 2 and Liliana with one of the creatures, he'll eat the one that's attacking Liliana and take 4, and Liliana will get to live. So in this spot, just attacking with 2 is sufficient. The opponent chooses to eat the Mutavault. Liliana's going to die, and I play out a land and pass back to the opponent. Alright, so he draws a Grim Lavamancer, but chooses instead to use his mana to play another Liliana. At this point, with all of these lands, I think I'm going to sacrifice Mutavault because I want to keep my devotion up should I draw into a Master of Waves. So Mutavault bites the dust, and that was an opportunity missed. Well, I'm sorry, I take it back. I keep expecting the opponent to attack with this big Tarmogoyf. He hasn't updated his power and toughness in a little while, but I think it might be a little bit bigger. No, it's still the same. Let's see, sorcery, instant. What happened to? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the cards in hand rather than the graveyard. Still creature, land, sorcery, and planeswalker. So Tarmogoyf should be a 4/5 right now. But he hasn't updated it. But anyhow, he didn't want to attack with it because he wanted to be able to protect the Liliana. So totally makes sense. For my turn, I draw Silvergill. Not unhappy to draw that. And I hit an Island Walk Lord, which is great because I have access to Island Walk with Spreading Seas, and I'll be able to get that Liliana off the table. So a very slow, grindy game with the opponent limited on access to his mana. Had a great draw, though, with Kolaghan's Command. Would have been nice if I still had that Cursecatcher on the table. So the opponent still knows that I have one Cavern, but he doesn't know the other card. Takes his time thinking here about what to do, but in the end decides to shock the Lord and make me discard. So easy choice. I'll discard a Cavern, and I guess the opponent now knows all the cards in my hand. Doesn't know this one. And I draw another Spreading Seas, which might just keep me in this game for a couple more turns. At this point, I can open up my graveyard just so we keep an accurate Tarmogoyf count. Let me shrink this a little bit. Alright, so the opponent has instant, land, planeswalker, sorcery, and I have creature. So he should be a 5/6 right now. Having drawn Spreading Seas, I'm just going to go ahead and play that on the Blood Crypt. And I drew into another land. Not very great. Still can't attack into this Tarmogoyf. Again, instant land, Planeswalker, sorcery, creature. So he should be a 5/6 right now, and it might be time to start attacking with that guy. Opponent decides to play out Grim Lavamancer here as a potentially repeatable source of removal. He's got some gas in his graveyard to feed this guy, and he can potentially just start picking off my Silvergill Adepts. Tarmogoyf is a 5/6 right now, and probably should start attacking, but the opponent decides not to. I guess maybe not updating it in a while. He thinks it's still a 3/4 and would potentially trade with the Silvergill Adepts. Okay, it looks like I drew into another Silvergill Adept for the turn, hit a Cursecatcher, and I'll just play that guy out. At this point, having bodies on the table is good against Grim Lavamancer. If he picks off one of them, I still keep my devotion up, and my hopes of drawing into a Master of Waves are still alive. Opponent hits another red source, comes into play tapped though. Just passes the turn. Makes sense leaving up Lightning Bolt and Grim Lavamancer, but still not attacking with his 5/6. Super weird. More than just weird, it just seems wrong, right? Because what if, am I going to triple block the Tarmogoyf and then he picks one off with the Grim Lavamancer's effect is on board, so it would be ridiculous to try to triple block because then he would just eat my 2 guys and I'd lose another one and I'd just pretty much be out of the game. No, I would just take 5 damage, and then if he picks off one of my guys with Grim Lavamancer, I can only crack back for a few points of damage. I mean, he should have gotten in. But with the Lavamancer effect up, I'm going to choose not to run out the Reejerey right now. If I keep him in hand, I can tick AEther Vial up next turn and potentially bring him into play, and if the opponent has tapped his Lavamancer for whatever reason, can't respond, I can then play a Master of Waves and get extra devotion. But if I play out the Reejerey right now, he's obviously the best target for Lavamancer, and I just straight up lose my Lord to a Lavamancer tap. So I'm going to opt to let him pick off one of my less valuable guys. Play my land finally, and pass it back to the opponent. It's going to eat 2 things out of its graveyard and kill one of my creatures. Yuck. It draws more land. So these Spreading Seas becoming increasingly useless as we move forward. Alright. Opponent is thinking. And just passes. I mean, he's being extremely sort of overly patient here. Should have attacked again with the Tarmogoyf, in which case I would be sitting at 10 right now instead of 20. But just passes the turn. We see he has access to Abrupt Decay and Terminate and Lightning Bolt. A lot of stuff. AEther Vial is going to go to 3, and I finally hit a Master of Waves. So I'm going to start with this guy, and at this point, this forces the opponent's hand with Lavamancer. If he wants to reduce my devotion, he sort of needs to act now. Lavamancer is useless against Master of Waves. Abrupt Decay is useless against Master of Waves. So, opponent put on the spot here. So, typically though, I mean, this is a tiny misstep that a lot of opponents make, is that instead of reacting to his Enter the Battlefield trigger, the opponent responds to him on the stack. I don't think it makes a big difference, but typically you want to wait until the last opportunity to respond to things. And Master of Waves has an enters the battlefield trigger. So when Master Waves enters the battlefield, put a number of elemental tokens. So let's see, the opponent's going to act now, I think, if I remember correctly. And he's going to bolt one of my guys. And then we see he's going to fetch right now so that he can eat his fetch out of the graveyard with Lavamancer. It's pretty efficient. Doesn't want to eat any of these rarer cards, I guess, card types for Tarmogoyf. So eats 2 of his fetch lands and is getting rid of another Silvergill Adept. But at this point, the Master of Waves will come into play. The trigger will go onto the stack. And if the opponent, I guess the opponent probably still would have responded to the trigger if he had waited. If he didn't, I would have been happy to get all of the devotion off of my Silvergills. But he went ahead, killed the 2 Silvergills, and now I'm going to get to bring in Merrow Reejerey. In the end, I guess not a big difference because he still has Lavamancer on the board. He's going to be able to deal with this Reejerey. I'm just doing my best to protect this guy. And I still, with these 2 Spreading Seas, get 5 elemental tokens, which will give me a chance in this game, which I feel like I'm falling far behind in, but without this opponent attacking with this Tarmogoyf, I don't know, it's giving me sort of a strange sense of hope. Alright, opponent's going to terminate the Merrow Reejerey. Makes sense. That guy's awesome. And he just passes back again. I understand not attacking with Tarmogoyf now. But still, a little bit strange. The opponent could have played Chandra and just hit the Reejerey with her +1. No, I'm sorry. That +1 only does to opponents. He would have to -3 her, which isn't really great value. And she might just die to the elementals anyway. So I'll go to my draw step, hit another land, story of my life. The opponent's not being aggressive, so I feel like I can do it here. I can turn up the heat a little bit. Swing with 10 power worth of elementals. Of course, Tarmogoyf will eat one of them. And the opponent is going to trade his Lavamancer here, which I have to think is incorrect. So he's going to block and then eat a couple things and kill another elemental. In the end, he's going to save himself some damage, but he's going to lose a pretty awesome creature in Grim Lavamancer. Trading it with an elemental. Opponent takes 4, goes down to 10. After eating all the stuff from his graveyard, Grim Lavamancer and Tarmogoyf are a little bit of an anti-synergy, since Lavamancer needs to eat things out of the graveyard and Tarmogoyf wants things in the graveyard. We see creature, instant, planeswalker, sorcery. So opponent's doing a good job keeping his types in the graveyard. So, and then on my side, I've got a land. So Tarmogoyf's still comfortably a 5/6, but hasn't attacked once this game. Opponent's thinking pretty carefully about what his play is here. He can try to go with Dark Confidant and get some card advantage, but he's at a pretty low life total. He chooses to Abrupt Decay one of my Spreading Seas, and then plays Dark Confidant. So pretty efficient use of his mana there, I guess. He only had 1 black mana, and getting rid of the Spreading Seas got him access to another black mana. Okay, Harbinger is pretty nice with all these lands. I can get him out at instant speed. I don't really have good attacks here, though, so I think I'm just going to pass the turn. Opponent untaps and reveals Terminate, which I'm pretty happy about because Master of Waves has protection, and if he wants to use Terminate on one of my elementals, that's fine. I'm happy about it because it's hitting his life total. So he's down to 8. Looks like he got a Terminate and a Blackleaf Cliffs this turn. Finally, we see Chandra here. She's going to tick up and make mana. So she made 2 red mana, and he's going to use, let's see, one of those and his black mana to terminate an elemental, keeping my board, I guess, as contained as possible. I'm going to bring Harbinger in on my on the opponent's end step because if I draw an Island Walk Lord, I have lethal with Island Walk. It's 3, 3, and 2. I drew another Master of Waves. I was kind of hoping to hit an Island Walk Lord, but I'll settle for a Master of Waves. This guy at this point is going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more tokens, and they're all going to be 3/2s. Still don't have great attacks right now, but I'll have awesome attacks next turn. Very much worth noting that Master of Waves with protection from red cannot be targeted by Chandra. Opponent untaps, and looks like he found a Terminate off the top of the deck. Again, red removal, not very good against Master of Waves. Opponent goes down to 6, and let's see, drew another land. So he's drawing removal and land every turn, which seems like it should be great. Does get to activate Chandra. does so, revealing a Dark Confidant. But that guy's not going to protect him against an army of 3/2s. So I think at this point the opponent scooped it up. So that was a sort of view of Jund with Chandra, Torch of Defiance. Seemed pretty much like basic Jund, swapping out Kalitas for the new Planeswalker. Opponent didn't attack a couple times with Tarmogoyf when he could have, but we see that I'm at 20, so it's possible that wouldn't have made a big difference anyway. Very, very strange game, kind of dragged out, but we got there. Let's go ahead and see how the next game went. All right, so looking at the opening hands, obviously I have to mulligan. On the opponent's side of things, he's got 3 lands, and we'll be able to get Liliana on turn 3, turn 1 Bolt, turn 2 Terminate, turn 3 Liliana, potentially turn 4 Chandra. Looks really solid on his side. I'm going to have to go down to 6. And this looks workable. Not fantastic by any stretch. We do side out AEther Vials, so we sort of accept that we're going to play a slightly slower game post-sideboard against Jund. The Negate is interesting. I brought all of them in. I brought the 2 Dispels against all of the Terminates and the Kolaghan's commands, but also all 3 Negates from my sideboard came in because we know the opponent is playing Chandra instead of Kalitas. Negate would obviously be useless against Kalitas, but it's fantastic against Chandra. Can also catch the opponent off guard on turn 3 if he tries to run out of Liliana. Can turn the tide of a game from the opponent taking it over with a Liliana on an empty board to me being on the front foot with the opponent having tapped out for a countered Planeswalker. So I keep and I scry. I actually think that I put a Mutavault there on the bottom. I'm going to have plenty of time to draw lands. And I really would just rather see Merfolk. Now, Kira is really, really great here because the sort of nascent plan at this point is to play 2 lands and leave Negate up, hoping that the opponent plays a turn 3 Liliana. And then me following up with a turn 3 Kira would just be excellent and just let me establish some presence in a game where I mulliganed against an attrition deck. Usually if you mulligan against Jund, you know, it's really tough. It's almost like mulliganing against 8-rack. Like starting 1 card down against a deck with so much hand disruption can be really rough. So the opponent cracked his fetch land and gets a Blood Crypt, drew it into that 4th land, which he wanted for Chandra. Things going pretty well for the opponent, but we see that with him on the removal plan, he doesn't really have plays until turn 3. So him not playing a creature on turn 2 makes me think that it's much more likely that he has a Liliana in hand now. At that point, I knew I was going to play Chandra, so if I played a Mutavault, the opponent might be slightly less likely to play out the Liliana because I can start attacking her with the Mutavault. So anyhow, I just played out an island at this point. I knew I was going to be using my mana next turn to cast something, so not attacking with Mutavault, don't need to play it this turn. Opponent should go down to 18 here for his second fetch, doesn't, but I think I remind him about it a little bit later. So we're going to see the plan is coming to fruition. He tries to go for Liliana, and I have my Negate up. Big plays, and following up with Kira. I'm going to have some protection for my team moving forward. With all of these creatures in hand, it's really nice to have the protection from Kira. I think for that turn I drew into another Reejerey. So now the opponent's choices are Chandra, or double removal on Kira. Seems like Chandra's probably the right way to go. Let's see. Alright, so we corrected the life total here. He's fetched twice and did a shock land, I think, so it should be 18, 17, plus the shock, 15. Perfect. So here's the Chandra. Let's see what he's doing with it. So since he can't, let's see, he can't target Kira, so he can't -3. And he doesn't have any mana to do anything with her +1. Sorry, no, he doesn't. He could have made 2 mana and cast Lightning Bolt, but he'd only be able to hit my face since Kira would just counter it. So instead he's going to tick her up, exiles a Grim Lavamancer from the top of his deck, which would have actually been a great card for him to draw, because Grim Lavamancer is an excellent way to break a Kira shield. Instead it got exiled to Chandra's +1, and he's just going to deal 2 damage to my face. So I go to 18, and had a decision to make. I drew a Mutavault, which is quite good. I tap, and then I think I untap. No, I threw out a Lord before I really knew what I was going to do. The decision here was between activating Mutavault and killing Chandra, or just bringing the opponent to 10. With Kira on the table, my creatures are pretty safe, and if I just keep trying to push damage, we can clock the opponent and kill him potentially in a couple turns. If we swing right now for 5 with Kira and Mutavault, he goes to 10, and then next turn, let's see, if we just activate the 2 Mutavaults, it's 6, 6, 2, and 2, which is exactly 10, so potentially representing a 2-turn clock. But in combination with potential removal in his hand, Chandra -3 can start to deal with Kira and get my guys off the table. So I went with the decision to get rid of the 4-drop Planeswalker instead this turn. I did think quite a bit about it, though. I mean, ultimately the goal is to kill the opponent, not really worry about what's on his board. But Chandra's pretty threatening, and could potentially give him card advantage by doing that exile off the top of his library. So we're going to see a Bolt terminate, getting rid of Kira here. I think the opponent doesn't like having to deal with her. So getting a ton of value out of Kira. We have our 2 Mutavaults and Lord of Atlantis. And I think I'm just going to push here. If I activate the 2 Mutavaults, I'm going to swing for 8. It's a 2-turn clock, and I've got 2 Lords backing me up in hand. So swing for 8. Opponent pretty much just tapped out. I'm not sure why he drew 2 cards there. That's a little bit weird. I guess he didn't notice that he drew the 2 cards. But, you know, not a big deal. He does have mana up for Terminate now. And I draw another Mutavault. Pretty excellent. So we have some choices this turn. Can activate 2 Mutavaults and attack. He would eat 1 and take 5, and we can just continue to lean. However, if he has Terminate or Bolt, he can kill a Mutavault, eat a Mutavault, and take 2 from a Lord, or eat a Lord, take 3, Bolt a Mutavault. Combat doesn't look really good right now, so I think I'm going to take this opportunity to get these Reejereys on the table and just present a ton of pressure. This way we can tap his Tarmogoyf and try to swing for 4 with the Lord of Atlantis. He's going to play the Terminate, hitting the Lord. Tarmogoyf will get to untap. Opponent draws another land. Yeah, you know, that extra card didn't really do him a ton. I think it just would have been an extra land, basically. We're going to see the second Chandra here, and I think he went with the +1 again, where he exiles the card. And I think he's going to want to play the Scavenging Ooze. Didn't really have much of a choice. He has nothing in hand to cast with the mana from the other +1. If he -3s a Reejerey, I still have 4 creatures on the board. I can activate all 3 Mutavaults, and he can only block 1 of them, and then he would be taking 8, I guess. However, if he plays Scavenging Ooze here with his 2 remaining mana, he still only has 2 blockers. Block 2 Mutavaults and take 10, I think. So, pretty desperate stuff at this point. And I see the lethal. I draw an Island Walk Lord, and I could totally just play him, tap his 2 creatures, and attack for lethal, even with just the 2 Reejereys. But if I have lethal on board and the opponent's tapped out, just activate the 3 Mutavaults and attack. So if he blocks 2 Mutavaults, he's still going to be taking 4 + 3 + 3 is 10. And if he had a Slaughter Pact for one of the Mutavaults, then he would still be taking 6 from the Reejereys. So he only has 1 card in hand, and the best possible thing it could be is a Slaughter Pact. So block, Slaughter Pack still takes 6. We don't need this Lord. So we win either way. It's just to say, be confident when you have a dominant board state for an Alpha Strike. So at that point, the opponent scooped it up. So that is an early look at Chandra, Torch of Defiance in Jund. And we can see how it matches up against Merfolk. -3 for 4 mana. I mean, it's a nice option to have removal, but it leaves Chandra at 1. And between us playing so many creatures and often having access to Island Walk, paying 4 mana for a removal spell that just gets killed next turn by a Cursecatcher attacking, potentially not the best. Her +1 here can be great in the later part of the game, like right now, where he got an extra Scavenging Ooze while ticking his Planeswalker up. Against an aggressive deck like Merfolk, it's probably going to be too slow most of the time. Seems like it would be best in sort of the mirror match, like Jund versus Jund, because can generate card advantage, can remove important threats that the opponent manages to top deck. Like if the opponent, top deck the Scavenging Ooze, eats a couple creatures, Chandra can nip it in the bud with 4 damage before the Scavenging Ooze gets out of hand, for example. And if anybody in the Jund mirror manages to get the emblem online, then that'll just close a game out by itself. So hard to say, I mean, whether overall it's better than Kalitas or not. I think it's worse than Kalitas in this particular matchup. Kalitas combined with some removal spells can really do a number against Merfolk. Kalitas also has lifelink, which makes it really hard to race them sometimes. So yeah, pretty interesting match. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Have you played against Chandra yet? Has she seemed good? Has she seemed bad? Let me know any questions you might have. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks a lot.